How many players in that really good 2024 class are going to get into the 2 deep this year, this season for this team?
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Badger fans, what is going on? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you so much. I'm your host, Ryan Harings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. This summer long, FanDuel is hooking you up boost and bonus daily, all summer long, every single day. Just head over to FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, so I wanted to do, the best part about this show is honestly the interactions with people, like talking to them, getting to meet them, reading the comments on the Discord. So we're just going to loop it all together into a community show. All your thoughts and comments and questions, let's talk about it. Let's chop it up. Let's get around the old Badgers fireplace here, and let's talk sports. Let's talk Badgers together. So the first comment I want to get into, GT Mueller. How many freshmen can play into the 2 deep this year? Great question. This usually when you're talking about freshmen jumping into the 2 deep, it's a combination of two things. And I've talked about this 24 class a lot. I've lauded how good I think it is, how deep I think it is, how it's going to be a bedrock for this program going forward. But usually for 2 deep players to really get into that, or freshmen to get into that 2 deep, it's a combination of they have to be really good, physically advanced, and that position also has to be lacking in depth. So there's some players that I think are really good in this 24 class, and I just think this team is deep enough that they're not going to get into 2 deep. But there's some positions where this team just doesn't have much depth, so players are going to be propelled into the 2 deep, whether they're ready or not. But let's answer the question, right? So quarterback, no. Running back, no. And again, people might push back and say, whoa, Dupree, Jones, I love them, but they're not unseating Ches or Walker. They're just not. People may disagree with that. I don't think it, barring injury, and we're going to approach this list without talking about people getting hurt because it's impossible to predict. Barring injury, Ches and Tawee are your 1 and 2 this year in some combination. And Dylan will play, Dupree could play, Akers going to play. But Ches and Tawee are your 1 and 2. So I don't think a running back's getting into the 2 deep. Tight end, no. Receiver, no. Offensive line is interesting, right? And it goes back to the point I made earlier. It's a position without a lot of depth, right? To get into the 2 deep, you have to have a position without a lot of depth, and you have to have some pretty special players. That's a perfect explanation of what we're seeing on the offensive line. Who have we seen in the 2 deep in practice? Colin Cubberly, Derek Jensen, Emerson Mandel, Kevin Haywood. Now, I don't think Jensen's necessarily going to stay on that 2 deep line, but I do think in the 2 deep, you're potentially looking at 3 guys, Cubberly, Mandel, and Haywood. So 3. On the defense line, I think Dylan Johnson gets into the 2 deep, so there's 4. Linebacker, I think Anelu Lafayette does. I think he sneaks into the 2 deep at outside linebacker, so that's 5. Cornerback, I do think by the end of the year, it's possible Xavier Lucas sneaks into that 2 deep as well. So that gives you 6, right? Gives you 6. 4 on the lines, 1 at linebacker, 1 at corner. Now, other players are going to play. You know, like I said, the running backs are going to play. I think Steck's going to play. I think Mabry's going to get some mop-up minutes. But I think Ernest Willer's going to play. But I think that's the group. And Tommy Heiberger would have been in this discussion as well if not for the, getting a little banged up with a knee injury. So I think the answer is 6. And 6 with potentially a few other players are going to play. Dimitri asks, I would love to hear a more detailed evaluation of Joseph Griffin Jr., the transfer receiver from Boston College. What are Vinny Anthony and CJ Williams doing better? They're playing. They're getting reps. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it, Dimitri. And Dimitri comments on a lot of stuff, and I really appreciate it. But quite frankly, they're playing. They're getting reps, and Joseph Griffin isn't. He definitely not at their level. So I do think, listen, Vinny Anthony's faster. CJ Williams is probably just a little more polished. Griffin came over kind of late, so I'm sure he's still kind of learning the system. But he's pretty far down on the depth chart. And quite frankly, I don't expect to see him much this year unless that light clicks on, right? Unless it comes together. But yeah, I don't expect to see a ton there. Mr. October, not a peep either way on Aaron Witt. I did some looking around. A groin. Feel awful for the kid. Yeah. It stinks, man. You nailed my sentiment here, man. I'm rooting for him. I just feel terrible for him. Like, to fight back through everything he's fought through and then to have a groin injury, it just feels like he's a little cursed, quite frankly. Super unlucky. But again, this is partially why, with him already being out, this is why you're seeing Anelu Lafayette get more reps. This is why you're seeing him get into the competition and the conversation to jump into that too deep. It's because Aaron White he's already hurt. He's hurt again. And because that outside linebacker depth, which was a major issue last year, the coaches have talked about it again and again and again. It's a little thin, which is why I do think you're going to see a Lafayette jump in there and play a big role this year. A Hills asks, Ryan, just wonder what round do you think Tawee Walker will be drafted in, or will he be a UDFA? Yeah, this is a tough one. It's going to depend so much on what he runs. Now, obviously, he needs to put together the year that I think he's going to put together. He needs to stay healthy. He needs to show that he can catch the ball, which he's shown in practice up to this point. I think pass protection is going to be a check for him, which is a huge part of NFL evaluations. I think the physicality is a check for him, which they look for. But what's he going to run? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's such a big part of NFL evaluations, right? Like, how fast are you? Even above great film and above so much else, they just look at the stopwatch. They look at the measurables. And I'm not sure if he's a 4.5 guy. He might be more like a 4.55 guy. I don't know. We have to see. We really have to see what he runs. If he runs well, if he can put like a 4.5 or a 4.48 on the table, if he can do that with this type of season I think he's going to have, I think he could be a 4th round pick. I think he'd be a 4th or 5th round pick, somewhere in that range. But you don't have to be an NFL draft pick either to be a really, really good college running back. Cody Schrader led the SEC in rushing last year for Missouri, and he went undrafted. He had like 1,600 yards in the SEC. Not the same type of back as Tawee. Like, he doesn't have that type of power, but he's a similarly undersized back. He didn't put up great numbers at the combine, and he didn't get drafted. But he had an incredible college year. So I don't know. I think Walker is probably a 4th or 5th round guy if he runs well enough. But I think he has the talent to be a college running back that is that is better than a 4th or 5th round talent, right? Like, I think he can be a dynamic college running back. Badger Bill says, any word on Nate White at receiver? Ever since he won the Heisman in my dynasty, I want to see him on the field. Yeah, I didn't see him getting reps. I got to be honest. When I see players switch position, I kind of just don't think it's in the cards. And this is not to, I root for the kid. I have nothing against him. He definitely has some unique quickness and short area stuff. There's some explosiveness to his game when you go back and watch his high school film, when you talk to people. But is he going to be better at receiver than guys like Kyan Johnson, than guys like Trechka Kahuna, than guys like, you look at some of what we're bringing in. He's not going to be better than those guys. He's already starting behind them because those players have been repping being a receiver for years. I'm not going to write him off, right? But it would surprise me. Typically, people switching positions, they don't come to a new position and become an impact player. Certainly, there's some examples of it, like Leon Jacobs went from fullback to outside linebacker and got drafted by the Jaguars. I don't see that happening for Nate White. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but I'm also always going to try to be honest on this show. All right, we're going to take a quick break there. We're going to come back and talk about one of the big talking points. The rushing game has looked good. Is that because the rushing game is really good, or the defense has had some issues? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains the number one source for all of your sports betting needs. It's the official sports book of Major League Baseball, the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network, for a reason, right? It's easy to use, which is what we all need. Easy to get your payouts when you win. Futures, parlays, teasers, spreads, it's all there. Plus, they're hooking everybody up. Like I said, all summer long in the intro, boosts are bonus daily. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. You got to head over to FanDuel.com to start making the most out of what we have left in the summer. FanDuel, again, the official sportsbook of Major League Baseball, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Network, for a reason. It's fast, it's easy, it's simple to use. It's where we go for all of our betting, and the user interface is incredible. And futures are coming up, right? NFL, college football, it's all coming up over on FanDuel. It's a great time to get started. FanDuel.com. Please do it responsibly. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, let's keep going here. Let's talk about, honestly, one of the biggest questions I think that continues to come up, not just on the boards, but also for me, like one of the biggest kind of internal questions I have. And this one is from David P. He said, Obviously, you've seen them play. Hopefully, Walker's stock is up to due to him and not our defense. However, I'm skeptical since he wasn't a starting running back at Oklahoma. All the running backs are apparently looking good, and our D struggled to stop the run last year. Sure, hope I'm wrong, but these things seem to point to a potential issue on defense. Okay, let's break this down bit by bit. I think this is a great comment. I think there's a lot of meat to dive into here from David. The first one is talking about Tawee Walker. He wasn't a starter at Oklahoma last year. He wasn't, but Oklahoma recruits really well at the running back spot. He had a really good year, had 7 touchdowns, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I'm not trying to like paint lipstick on a pig or whatever. Like talking to the Oklahoma guys, they're very high on him. Then talking to the other people who are more veteran than I am, who have watched the entirety of practice, they all seem surprised by how good Tawee Walker's looked. And then talking to the defensive players, we had the linebackers yesterday. We were able to talk to John Pius. We were able to talk to Leon Lowry. We were able to talk to Daryl Peterson. I mean, the words bandied about with Tawee Walker: bulldozer, tough, physical, hard to bring down, wins plenty of battles. Like I think the hype is real on Walker. And sometimes it just isn't the right situation for a player to start. We've seen that in a lot of areas. Like a player may not start in program A, goes to program B, and becomes an NFL draft pick just because that situation's better, maybe the scheme fits better, whatever it is. I'm pretty on board with Tawee Walker. Not as like the best running back in the Big Ten, but as a really good starting Big Ten running back. I'm pretty on board there. His second point, and there's some truth there, right? But some of that is because I think the running back group is actually literally pretty good. I talked about Tawee. Both those freshman running backs, those are 4-star kids. 4-star kids who are coming in physically ready to go. So I do think there's a lot to like there. And Aker is a upperclassman that's played a lot of ball. He's in the best shape of his life. He's a big physical guy. He's looked pretty solid too. So I do think Tawee Walker hype is real. I do think the running back room is really good. But getting to your last point here, I also do think there's legitimate concerns with the defense. 2 things can be true here. Multiple things can be true. In this case, 3 things can be true. Like I said, I think the Walker hype's real. I think the freshman running backs are really good. And I do think the interior defense line is still struggles a little bit with the run. I still think the guys like the Ernest Willers and the Dylan Johnsons are a year away. I still think you can use some reinforcements there. Brandon Lane got better, I think, as you know, from even the few practices I saw, he's flashed. But yeah, I do think that's a legitimate question. I do wonder if we're going to struggle defending the run this year. And I didn't come away. I'll say this. I didn't come away from practice feeling a ton better about our rush defense. So yeah, it's a very legitimate point, David. And I think some of it is because of how good I think our rushing attack will be, but I don't think our rushing attack is going to look quite this good against Iowa or against Oregon, right? So some of both is what I'd say. And it's a very fair point. Alad says, the Badgers schedule is brutal. We need to be careful to not oversell this season. And that's just an interesting comment, right? Because I feel like I've been pretty optimistic after watching practice. I feel like a lot of people have. But I don't know if being optimistic and liking the team more is overselling the season. I still think it's like an 8-4 team, right? I still think this team is going to drop a couple games this year. There's still some holes on the roster. But it's also okay to get excited, right? It's okay to be a fan and see the improvement and then speak on the improvement that I think the roster is better. I think the defense is faster. I think there's more skill players. I think TVD's a slightly better quarterback than Tanner Mordecai. I think the receiver room's a year better. I like the offensive line. Listen, there's depth questions, and this team is going to lose a couple games, but I don't think being excited is overselling it, right? And that's kind of where I'm at. I think I'm excited for it. I'm really anxious to see the season. I'm a fan. I'm hopeful these pieces are going to come together. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be bumpy in spots for sure, because this is still a team that going to have to rely on some young pieces. It's a team that is relying on a transfer quarterback that has ups and downs and inconsistencies. And it's a team that, quite frankly, is going to need some unproven pieces to step up on the defensive line. So I hear you, but I'm excited in general. I come away from practice being a little more excited than I was going into practice. So we'll see. John K says, sounds like we could use Langdon Nordgaard in the tight end room. So Langdon Nordgaard, again, I've talked about him for a couple of days, and I just want to reset the picture on him. He was a preferred walk-on, in-state kid. I think to pair. I'm trying to remember where he came out of. It's going to drive me nuts. I know it's on the tip of my brain. But in-state kid, 6'4", 6'4.5", somewhere in that range, about 190 pounds. If you go and watch his high school film, and again, he's a walk-on. I don't want to oversell it, right? But if you go and watch his high school film, what you would see is great hands, the ability to make contested catches, the ability to really high point the ball. A lot of what we were hoping. Oh, who is the Tommy McIntosh? A lot of kind of what we were hoping he would be for this offense. It's possible Langdon Nordgaard grows into a version of that. It really is. A lot of what we're hoping Vernon or Joseph Griffin is for this offense. It's possible Langdon Nordgaard grows into a version of that. He had some track stuff in high school. How fast is he? I think he's probably like a 4.6 guy, but maybe, I don't know. He does have some track stuff, some multi-sport stuff. To John K's point, could we use him in the tight end room? He's not big enough. Like he's not going to be that big and physical. He's 20 pounds lighter than a guy like Jackson McGowan, and McGowan isn't a very good blocker. So no, maybe down the road in 2 or 3 years if he puts on a lot of weight, but I don't know if he has the frame for that, John. But could he be a functional receiver? It's not. I would say it's not impossible, but he's going to have to prove that he's got the speed. There were a couple nice clips I thought in practice, like he had a couple contested catches. We'll see. It's definitely, I would say this. There's certain players. There's certain players that I would just say put a pin in it and remember the name just in case. And I would say Nordgaard is one of those guys. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about the previous couple recruiting classes and maybe why it didn't work out for some players and what it means for these 24 kids and how they're kind of connected. We're going to talk about that, plus Jamel Howard, Chris Brooks, and a few other spots as well coming up on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at GameTime. GameTime is the #1 source for all of your ticket needs, whatever it is that you want to go to. Go get there through GameTime. GameTime is awesome. Specific games or matchups you want to see, huge inventory, best prices. You don't have to plan things out. It's logistically simple. Pictures of the seats before you sit down. Flash deals, right? So you can get sometimes better prices the closer the event comes up. So you don't have to plan extensively in advance and figure everything out, get stressed about it. Sometimes you just want to do a spur of the moment thing. That's what GameTime is great for, right? Spur of the moment, flash deals, click it, let's go Phantom of the Opera, let's get it, right? That's what GameTime is here for. Download GameTime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Okay, let's keep going here. Let's talk some more of these questions and comments. Some really good ones. Excuse me. Some really, really good ones here. I want to get into this one. This is from Arrogant Prickly. He says, the majority of the 2024 class is going to play early due to lack of talent in the preceding classes. I doubt there will be many transfers from the class if they don't pan out. Yeah, like you look at what should be the backbone of this team, right? It should be the 2021 class. It should be the 2022 class. The 2021 class, there's like 6 guys left from it, right? So you have and 7 if you count Braylon Allen, who left early but was obviously an impact player. Listen to some of these names from the 2021 class: Nolan Rucci, Brian Sanborn, Jake Ratzlaff, TJ Bowlers, Deacon Hill, Jack Pugh, Marcus Allen, Loyal Crawford, Mike Jarvis, Al Ashford, Skylar Bell, Antoine Roberts, and Io Agdaban. That class was gutted with departures, with players that didn't pan out, with players that had off the field issues, with those 2 running backs, with Marcus Allen, another one, with players that transferred, with players that retired. That should be the bulk of this program. That 21 class right now, which still has like a Riley Mullins from that class. There's still some pieces. Rico's from that class, but that class, and that's partially why you're seeing these depth issues in areas, because that 21 class is basically not much left of it. And that 22 class, you've already lost. Isaac Ham never showed up. Avion Jones, Corey Lai, Tristan Monday, Miles Burkett, Aiden Vaughn, Tommy McIntosh. So you look across those 2 classes, there's been a ton of attrition, more than there should be, right? And some of that is coaching change. Some of that is but some of that was just due to bad evals. Some of that was due to off the field issues. So yeah, it's a really good point. That's one of the reasons a lot of these 24 kids are in place to play early. It's because those preceding classes haven't panned out quite as well as they should. Ehoff said, surprised to hear Witt being one of our top 4 linebackers, outside linebackers. When he's healthy, he is, but he just doesn't stay healthy. And they really like him, but he just can't stay healthy, man. That sucks. It's terrible, but the best ability is availability, and he hasn't been able to demonstrate it. And with the lack of that, you don't get the reps, you don't develop. He talked about. He said, I'm still trying to find my way, and because of him getting hurt again, I think that's where I know Lafayette is going to really come into the fold. Badger Pat says, I'm really looking forward to hearing how the defensive line is coming along. In particular, how is Mr. Howard doing? We could sure use him if he reaches his potential. Yeah, I didn't see a ton from Jamel Howard, and I agree with you, man. There is a lot of potential there. The high school film was pretty good. The offer list showcased the pedigree. A lot of big-time schools were after him. We definitely need him. Like, we could absolutely need another big-time body in the middle to help clog things up. But we haven't seen a ton. And I would say the book is definitely not closed on him, right? We're talking about a player who's still pretty young in his career arc. It would be nice to see him start to make some noise at some point this year, though. Randall B says, is Brooks going to get play with all the receivers? This is a great question. So Chris Brooks Jr., I thought it had a really good couple practices. Other people said he was flashing before in the week before as well. Let's look at the receivers, right? Where would Chris Brooks play? So you have their slot positions right now. You have Tretch, you have Pauling. Kyan Barry Johnson has gotten some reps with the 2s. So that's kind of your slot spots. And then on the boundary, right, you have Bryson Green, CJ Williams, Quincy Burrows when he's healthy, Vinny Anthony. And then you have Chris Brooks somewhere in that mix. It's a tough battle for him. It really is. I think there's an opportunity. I was talking to Justin about this. I do think there's an opportunity where in some sets he maybe plays kind of a big slot, because he's not really the guy on the boundary that's going to run a deep vertical and run by somebody, right? So in that slot position, he can kind of do a slant and in, across and out, use his big body to post up, kind of box people out. So there's a potential there. I got to be honest, Randall, I do think he's going to get some reps because I just think he's been so consistent in practice. And again, I think he gives you something that the other guys don't give you, which is just a big, huge physical target with baseball mitts for hands. Like, he just catches everything that hits him on the hands. So I think you're going to find a role for him. I don't think it's going to be a ton. I don't think he's going to unseat anybody necessarily, but I think there's going to be certain packages where they're going to want to see what he can do out there. So I'm going to say yes, but it's not going to be a big role. Let's see. A couple other questions and thoughts here. Honeybee says, totally agree with you about basketball team. Nobody thinks will be good, which is normally when guard puts his best team together. I know people yell at me about basketball comments during football practice season, but yeah, like, I'm still here for basketball. And Honeybee, I agree. I think this team could surprise people. I really do. Listen, there's a lot of shooting. They've overhauled the roster. I do think there were some elements of the team that got a little stagnant last year. And I do think that the loss of AJ Storr is a little overrated. The scoring is great. Like, the pedigree is definitely great. He gives you size on the wing. There were a lot of things he didn't do a great job of being efficient at in Madison. And I kind of wonder if the collective will be a little better this year. It also, like last year, the whole was less than the sum of the parts. And this year, I think the whole might be a little greater than the sum of the parts. But we'll see. This one's from TC. He said, just based on the limited clips I've seen over the past couple of years, Chris Brooks Jr. looks like the best outside prospect we have. Looks like he is easily the best combination of size and speed. I'm telling you, like, I think he's going to play. And you've seen some clips of him bearing Hunter Wohler, being physical as a blocker. You've seen some clips of him coming down with a deep ball. Those were released from the Badgers media staff. He brings some unique stuff to the room. And I do think we're going to see him on the field in moments this year. Nick says, biggest failure offseason, they didn't get a proven tight end. Still puzzles me why they didn't. All they need is like one guy who had 200 yards or something. I mean, so they did go out and get Jackson McGowan, right? They did go out and get an LSU guy. Now, you're right, Nick. That's definitely not a proven guy. And this might come back to bite him. I'm not sure. Tucker Ashcraft's going to play. I don't know how proven you want to call him. They use him as a blocker. They use him with some physical. Like, he's a guy who can set the edge, who can block a little bit, who can get on a linebacker. And he's a guy who's a capable pass receiver, like a capable guy. Like, he can be a bit of an outlet. He can, run a route on a linebacker on third down and catch pass. Like, he's fine there. So I think it's probably a combination of Tucker Ashcraft. They feel good there. And then I think they like the receivers and the running backs. And some of those guys are going to fill bigger roles. Nowakowski's still on the roster. I know they're going to use him in spots. Jackson Aker is going to be used as a bit of an H-back, which is also going to lessen the need for that tight end a little bit. But yeah, I think maybe if you ask them, they would have liked to have added more to that room. I think it's a fair point. Playmaker says, for me, all practice has brought me so far as feeling more and more confident in our floors. 8-4 with above average quarterback play. Yeah, if they get above average quarterback play, I agree. I think they're going to win 8 to 9 games if they get above average to good quarterback play. I agree with that. I think a lot of pieces, and I would say, and health on the lines. If they can get relatively lucky with health on the lines and get above average quarterback play, I think it's going to be a good year, and I think they could surprise some people. So, yeah, I'm excited for it. Anyway, on Wisconsin, we're going to do a couple more shows this week, continue tracking practice as we see it. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in on Wisconsin, and we will talk tomorrow.